So, let's do this. Again, the class is going to be, normally I teach this class, I'll give you a little bit of history of who I am. I teach this class from Seattle to San Diego. I've taught it from Chicago to Texas, and I've taught it from, Maine to Florida. The fire prevention. Out of the 50 states, 40 states really is run by fire prevention. About 10 states are run by building departments. And guess where I get my best response? The guys that where it matters. So this is where I get all my best responses. And a lot of the classes that we do are recorded, and then we put it up on our website. So if you have some people that didn't come to this meeting, but you want to watch this meeting, it's going to be online for them. And it's free. You don't have to sign in. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to leave a credit card number. And so let me give you a little bit of history on who I am. I got hijacked into this. My dad's still in the ironworks business, so I got hijacked when I was 12. So I'm 54. Do the math. I got over 40 years of this. I got a master's degree in reverse stupidity. That means I don't know what to do. I've done all the wrong things, and that's what I'm here to share with you. So I'm like a little whistleblower of all the wrong things and what they cause. And so with that, you get to the point where now the only thing left to do is the right things to do. But this is called the bastard child of egress. So some of the stuff I'm going to show you today, it's just not here. It's everywhere in the U.S., coast to coast. So a lot of times when I do a class, and I've taught fire prevention, my best cities you'd think would be Massachusetts, right? But my two best states is actually Portland, Oregon, and New Jersey. New Jersey has written some of the best fire codes because they've had some of the worst horrific catastrophes, and they've written some of the best code from there because usually it's after a catastrophe you write the best code. And Portland, Oregon, I spent almost 10 years to show you what you're showing here today. So if you want us, we can have a 10-year program with you, or you can just copy the wheel. I'll give you the guy's name, Stu, over there, and we've had everything thrown at us. The political backlash, the tenants, the owners, everybody that's associated with the pushback that you're going to get. So we're just going to basically, and a lot of times these classes that I teach is 4 to 6 hours. So I teach fire prevention through Kane University in the entire state of New Jersey. It's a 6-hour class, right after pie. All right? And so you can imagine how long, but this is going to be, 1 to 2 hour class. I'll stay here as long as you guys want to keep talking about it. But what I'm going to do, this is sort of the bullet race. I'm just going to show you slides. I'm going to run this backwards. I'm going to tell you what the solution is right off the bat. Then we're going to work backwards and keep talking how we got to the solution. That way, in case we run out of time, you already know where it needs to go and who to call and who to either copy. So this is nothing more than just a copy class. So this is the bastard child of egress, out of sight, out of mind. And the cure is very simple. It took 75 years to screw this up. And you guys have your own internal cure, right? Everybody here knows that in most fire departments, the chief tells all the guys coming in, so the gray-haired guys tell the new guys, in case of fire, don't use the fire extinguisher. See? So there's already code for this. Don't fix it, just don't use it. So that's what the problem is. So now, fire escapes have been out there, and everybody sort of said, you know what, if we can't get a handle on it, just stop using it. So what we need to do is we need to get a door-to-door program where you guys walk into every building now, knock on the doors and tell the tenants the same thing. In case of fire, don't use the fire escape. So if that's going to be the cure, that's all you guys have to do. Your firemen already know not to use it, just now let's get the public aware not to use it, or let's use some of these programs. My job here is to show you some of the things that you're going to have. That doesn't mean you need more work. You guys already are understaffed, and you're not overpaid. Right? And so what happens is we need to make something that fire escapes find you. You don't find fire escapes anymore. They're going to come and find you. And we're going to work with fire prevention, building department, housing, health department. And basically these things will find these people, and then you'll get the eventual notice that something's happening at this address. Got it? So let's start, first of all, right here with the book. Okay? Actually, if you want to watch this one piece, this happened in just this past year. In 2014, there was more activity, fire escape-wise, than I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. And a lot of it was always tragic activity and tragic events. Ready? So, if that light is down, that light is down. This is in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Right now, firefighters are taking down the ladders and rolling up the hoses. But earlier in the night, when they pulled up, there were flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments because when you pull up to a building, and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them. They said that's scary, scary stuff. They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt.
The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in the fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people on that fire escape.
About 50 people were displaced inside this building. However, firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in, except the one unit where the fire was in. They said that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson, on the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
Isn't that great? So, you know, every fire escape failed, and they let everybody back in the building at the end of the night. And you saw in that photograph the child, you know, and the 8-year-old child. Your 8-year-old child was coming down a fire escape ladder, which, by the way, did not want to work because it's supposed to come down to the ground and hit the ground. So there was an 8-year-old child that you teach what? How to jump, 10 to 12 feet to the ground. And how many people? He had people stuck on the fire escape in the back. He had people stuck on the fire escape in the front. So when they got there with all those nice shiny red trucks, fighting a fire or a rescue mission? Rescue. So right now, everybody's in rescue mode, whereas what do fire escapes do? Are they there for you, or are they there for the clients to self-egress out of there, self-evacuate? So all of a sudden, and how many minutes does a fire need to fully engulf a whole building? And get even worse, so that when you guys go in with your gas masks, what happens now? Now you're giving that fire 3 to 5 minutes because you spent time taking ladders off your truck, getting the ladders on the truck, because the ladders that are on the fire escape don't come down anymore. So after you finally get everybody off, now who do they send into the building to go fight the fire that's already got 5 minutes on you now? Right? So at the end, like you said, hey, everything worked out. We put everybody back in the building except for that one fire, that one apartment that burnt down. This is common. That, you know, the fire escape. So if you don't have your second means of egress, what's supposed to happen on that building? Everybody up. You don't have a second means of egress. I went to this fire escape 6 months later. I investigated this building because they finally got around to having it inspected. The ownership did. Every fire escape had life safety issues. 6 months to a year later, they still haven't fixed any of them. So these things happen. So let's talk about the book. So let's start on all pages. So again, I'm going to tell you what the cures are, and then we're going to work backwards and we're going to fill it in. So as you can see here, page 1, we can give this to you in PDF form or Word form, and then you can eliminate anything that's on here if you don't want anybody's name on here. And you can put your own information. So this is a sample that we did for the city of Lowell, like a sample city. So we can have, if we have a model city here, we would do this for you. We'd make one of these up for you. And of course, eliminate any and all information associated with, you know, National Fire Escape Association. So it would just be your city names and phone numbers and everything, right? But here's the key. If you read the first part that says inspections, the fire escapes must be examined by a design professional or others acceptable to the building official. So what's it say on there? It said it gives you the guidelines of what that inspector is supposed to do. What's number 2? Number 2 says you're a repair vendor. Hey, repair vendor, there's some guidelines that we want you to follow with the guidance of your design professional. What's number 3? Number 3 says paint. Painting, it says that the EPA said in 2010 all fire escapes older than 78 have lead on them, which means what? Can you bring a flame to anything that has lead? So all the welding guys, can they show up at fire escapes anymore and put Band-Aids on fire escapes like they've been doing for 50 years? And do they remove the rust when they Band-Aid with a welding rod? No. So 98% of all the fire escapes in the U.S. are bolted and riveted fire escapes. Were they ever meant to be welded or repaired with a weld, or just pop that rivet, pop that bolt, put in a bolt back in? That's all they were ever made. So the EPA now doesn't allow. So if you are driving along and you see somebody pulling welding cables up to a fire escape, what's going to happen? Well, the same thing happened in Boston. They just did that this summer. You guys heard 2 firemen died on a windy day because the guys were welding on a fire escape. I'm going to show that today. Got it? All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, let's talk about lead safe. Well, the EPA just says you can't bring a flame. Okay? Number 3, we're going to talk about OSHA. OSHA says that during 1910.37, which we'll note, and you need to note it on your documentation, OSHA says that during renovations, alterations, and repairs of any building, you must maintain 2 means of egress that are certified. And if your second means of egress, which is usually an external fire escape, is compromised in any way, it doesn't shut down the site. Scaffolding can be ordered, that meets the building and the fire department's requirements with full staircases inside, and they can continue working. But that fire escape is taken out of the equation. So you either get your permit because you have two means of egress, or you get your permit because you've ordered scaffolding so you can have two means of egress. We'll talk about that today. This is a confidence test. A confidence test is not an opinion affidavit. It's not, hey, I think it looks all right. We're not wearing my sunglasses that day from a design professional or an inspector. It's not an opinion. This is a checklist. Now, they brought me into Seattle when I made this for them because there wasn't one. So I had to create one because some of the stuff had to be invented. And you'd think that if anybody, did anybody get the, in September, the NFPA 100 Years of Fire Escape magazine? In September, they put it out, celebrating 100 years of fire escapes. And we got the article, and so fire escapes have been around for 100 years, and nobody's ever put together a confidence test for it. So only after 4 people almost fell to their death, nobody died. But from a fire escape, so I created a confidence test that says that all design professionals and others acceptable to the building official need to fill out a checklist item that says there is no rust, there is nothing compromised, the welds have been either x-rayed or load tested, the through bolt into the building has been investigated. So this is a confidence test. So if you go online right now, you don't have to copy this, I don't have to send you this. You go online to Seattle or Portland, you type in fire prevention, you go to their website, they have not only confidence tests for this, they have confidence tests for sprinklers, for alarms, for all, steal everything. Don't just steal this one, steal everything they got there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Exams. When you have a fire escape that it's going to be looked at, you want photos. It doesn't have to be pretty. You don't have to put it in a pretty formatted form like this. I need 4 per page from the design professional or others acceptable to the building official, sent to me in hard copy and in email form. So you don't have to go all the way down to whatever building they're talking about, because in your office, your iPhone and your computer, you can just look at the problem and say, you know what, that looks like a mess. So everybody that is an investigator of any kind, they all have a digital camera and a digital phone, and believe me, they can give you the photos you need. Anything over so many cubic feet, what is it, 30,000 here, 32, 35 cubic, needs design professional oversight. All on your forms. Every state has these forms already. So if you're dealing with a 5 or 10-story building, you need to have engineer oversight while they're fixing that fire escape. This right here is the criteria to fix a fire escape, not to patch weld it. You know, you've got rust in the connection. What do you got to do? You got to open it up, remove 100% of that rust. You got to wire brush both ends of the metal. You got to spray primer that metal, and then before you put that back together, you inject it with 35 to 50 year silicone so you can encapsulate it and get a minimum of a 10-year warranty on all your repair work. What about the surface rust? Like any rusty bolt, what do you do when you bring it into port? You throw some guy over and you give him what? A scraper and a paintbrush, because that's surface rust. Can a fire escape that has surface rust be load tested? The answer is yes, because it's still going to get painted. But can a fire escape with internal rust and in any of its connections be load tested? The answer is no. So this is 2 things. Fire escapes must be structure sound, must be kept painted. They're kept painted. You can have the owner do his own painting, scrape it and paint it. In some cases, the EPA even gets into that. If an owner's going to do his own fire escape, but we'll cross that bridge at another time. This right here is a Boston affidavit. This is what the city of Boston wants you to submit in the city of Boston, so that in case the fire escape is good. There's one problem in the city of Boston. They let people with a G3 license, and I have one, fix the fire escape and sign off on your own work. How great is that? And then you sign a thing that says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the building code. What's that mean? Is the fox in the hen house or what? So let's do that. I'm trying to get all electricians and plumbers to join my side, and everybody sign off on their own work to make it easier for all the inspectors. Okay? So that's an opinion affidavit. By the way, this is what you're asking for now. Every time you guys ask for a design professional to tell you that the fire escape is okay, he's giving you an opinion, and you look for this. He writes this at the very last page. To the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the code. It's ready for its intended use. Was there a load test? Was there a critical investigation or evaluation of any kind? Or was this an eyeball test? Eyeball test will put firemen and tenants on the ground. Fast, right? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how fire escapes. They're 100 years old. Any new innovations to fire escapes in 100 years? None. The way I built one today and the way they built one in the 1900s is the same exact way. And they've been building fire escapes since 1850. We're going to talk about catwalks. You know that the code says that all means of egress must be complete to grade. So when you see a fire escape ladder that is 8 feet from the ground, is that the code, or did somebody forget the last portion of it? So the code says you can't have a fixed piece no more than 8 feet off the ground, because there's a continuation of that using a cantilevered ladder or a cantilevered stair. But so some people read it to that point, and so a lot of fire escapes out there make grandma jump 8 feet. Got it? So all fire escapes, and over roofs, you go out a window onto a flat roof full of snow, you're supposed to go to a corner and jump 10 feet down. You can't. All fire escapes must have continuous walkway to a public way. And the last 8 feet has to be a drop ladder or a cantilevered ladder. If it's going to be cantilevered and it's in an alleyway, now you got to bring it up 12 to 14 feet. Because now trash trucks are going to come down and rip those things to the ground. But in certain areas, you can have the last piece of the fixed ladder 8 feet. But now you must have a slide ladder coming down if it's grandfathered in, because you can't do ladders anymore. Okay? We're even going to talk about cantilevers. And that people are still building fire escapes today. So remember the code. Any new construction can have a fire escape on it. New construction, dig a hole in the ground, brand new construction. Can you include fire escapes in that? Nope. See, anytime you build a brand new structures, no fire escapes are allowed. How about pre-existing structures? Can you make fire escapes one of the solutions? After you've exhausted all means of putting it inside, can you have fire escapes? So fire escapes are around because a lot of people are keeping their buildings. And how long can you maintain an existing fire escape as the day it was originally installed? Without any modifications to make it 42, without any modifications to make the bars 4 inches. How long can you maintain a pre-existing fire escape? For the life of the building. Okay? Let's talk about these tags. City of Seattle. Every fire escape has a tag. So when the firemen are running in the middle of the night, and this is to combat the, in case of fire, don't use the fire escape. So you're running down a smoky alleyway, and you get to a fire escape in Seattle and in Portland, and there's a white tag attached 7 to 10 feet off the ground. I'm going to show you what one of those look like. And it's white. What did the firemen do? Do they need to wait for the truck, get the ladder out of their truck? Or they just get on it, do whatever they have to do. Get on it. If it has a yellow, what's it mean? It's under maintenance. It's got some deficiencies, but there's no life safety concerns. If it's got a red, what do you got? What's the issue? It's an empty building, because if it's got a red and they still let people in it, who's liable? Besides the building owner. The cities, if you allow a building that doesn't have a second means of egress to be continuously occupied, what happens? Now, if they have a fire escape that's bad and it's got a red, can we set up some scaffolding and have some temporary means of egress so they can keep their building open? So don't have to necessarily shut down building. Your first card that you pull is scaffolding to basically negate the need of that fire escape. And on the inside, you just block it off. Any windows of the fire escape, you block it off, and you create an alternative means of egress. Okay? On the back, what you have there is what happened in 1972 in the city of Boston, which had the IBC code. Fire escapes must be evaluated, tested, or certified, and they forgot about it for so long, and it wasn't until this fireman almost lost his life. That picture there is won a Pulitzer Prize for that picture. But the woman had to die in order for the guy to get that shot. The niece survived. The fireman who was waiting for the truck ladder to come over grabbed it with one hand and saved himself. So if you got this book, put it in your office somewhere in case somebody wants to argue with you why fire escapes shouldn't be a big deal. But they are the bastard child of egress. It was only then, after this collapse, that they put in the 5-year rule. Because prior to then, and still in today, there is no 5-year rule, other than the rule that just came out of the IFC for 2012, which says that all buildings now in the U.S. must be inspected every 5 years. We'll talk about that code today. How many of you are aware that 2012 IFC said that all fire escapes, all buildings with fire escapes must be inspected every 5 years? How many were you were aware of that? Nobody knew. You know how I found out? I was in Utah teaching a class on fire escape collapses, and somebody bring it up. So it's not like we always know. Some of this stuff has to be sort of injected back into certain groups so you guys can get the word out. This is Portland. If you go on the internet right now, let's go back one. This is Portland. If you guys go online right now to any internet and you type in fire escape issues, Portland, Oregon, everything I'm about to tell you that's in this book, because I've taught there for 10 years. I've worked with their fire department and fire prevention, primarily fire prevention, for 10 years. They finally introduced this 2 to 3 years ago, and now it's a state. What you're seeing here is what was introduced into their state code. So if you want to know how to fix fire escapes, low test fire escapes, everything, well, everything that we've ever done, they finally got it into the state code. So one state down, 49 to go. So I don't have to tell you what to do, just go copy Oregon. Stu White, hey Stu, tell me all the problems I'm going to have. Who's going to spit first, who's going to kick second, and who's... And so, again, the wheel is already invented. Just go copy it. All right? So everything here is happening somewhere. Is it happening somewhere at 100%? No. Is it happening enough everywhere so that you can copy and then modify your model and make it fit yours? The answer is yes. So it's all common sense stuff. Everything I'm about to show you, you already know. You just didn't know you knew it until I show you. So a lot of times, if you write a fire escape violation, where do you go and what code would you use? Anybody know what code you'd use in case you're writing a fire escape violation in your state? So that's why people don't write one. If you don't know where it is, you write something else. You want to write a fire escape violation, but because you don't know what code, you write another violation on something else, and then you mention in passing the fire escape issue at that building, right? But here's your code. Now, this is something Mike sent me, so let's read what it says. 4604, if you want to write this down, everybody got their pens out, this is what you're going to write as your violation. Basically, if you're making a new one, it's got to be made of non-combustible, and it's got to be 100 pounds. But then as you read along, the fire code official is authorized to require testing or other satisfactory evidence that the fire escape meets the requirements of this paragraph. So it says the fire code official is authorized to require testing. When? Every now and then? Every 5 years? Is there any cyclical activity here that you can see? Or so if it ain't broke or you don't know about it, guess what's going to happen? It's never going to get fixed. If you're never back there looking at it, it's never going to get fixed. But who has the authority here, right off the bat, to require testing? What kind of testing? Eyeball testing? Wing testing? Send me a photograph testing? Jump up and down on it testing? What kind of testing? Well, let's take a look at the NFPA. And the safety code, if you ever reference the safety code, it's right there, 101, 7.2.8.6.2. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to approve any existing fire escape stair that has been shown by load test or other satisfactory evidence to have adequate strength. What's that mean? So they say test in your code, but now down below they further clarify it by saying the word what? Load test. And by the way, if I built it to 100 pounds per square foot, what should the test be? 100 pounds per square foot. So if I got a 5x5 platform, that's 25 square feet, times 100 pounds per square foot. The day I build it, it's got to hold how many pounds that day? 2,500. 25 years later, how many pounds it's got to hold? 2,500. Let's do a quick thing. I did this with John yesterday. Ready? Your tables are all 4x4, right? But let's say it's about 5x5. That's 2,500 pounds, right? Your average fireman weighs 200 pounds plus 100 pounds of gear. He's 300 pounds. 5 of those firemen weigh how much? 1,500. Can I fit 5 fully outfitted with tank firemen in a 5x5 on a fire escape? And if I could, if we squeeze them all in there and I squeeze those 5, I still have room for how many more? So fire escapes are built just enough or overbuilt, over-engineered. Now let's get those firemen out because now we're getting everybody evacuating the building. So now I got a 150-pound average tenant in the building. And I bring 10 tenants out already onto this 5x5. How many pounds is that? 1,500. How many pounds can that really hold? Can I get 10 tenants in a 5x5? this is again over-engineered for both the tenants and the firemen. So, a properly installed and properly maintained fire escape, will it ever collapse if you have the entire building's occupants come out and stay on it, and you guys show up and party on it with them and get on every stair, every platform, and fill every nook and cranny of a fire escape? Will it ever collapse? Or is it over-engineered to go beyond that? It's 1,000 pounds more, so it's all fire escapes are over-engineered for that reason. Okay? It'll never come down. So when you get to a fire escape, or to a building and it's on fire, and all these people are on the fire escape and they're getting off, meaning they're getting physically off the fire escape because the stairs works, the ladders work, what can you guys, and it has a white tag like Seattle, what do you guys want to start doing right away? Is this a rescue or is this a firefight? You're right? As long as they're getting off safely, and what do? Has a white tag, what do? Go do your job. Now the fire escape is for people to self-evacuate. It's never meant for you to use to fight the fire. It's made in case all hell breaks loose. Then what do you guys use? Then use the fire escape. Because you guys got ladders, you guys got trucks, you guys got all these ways of fighting a fire that was not to be using that. The fire escape as a means. So now let's talk about the termination. The lowest balcony should not be more than 18 feet from the ground. The fire escape stairs shall extend to the ground or provide with counterbalance stairs reaching the ground. Got it? So what's that mean? Can I have anything hanging up so many feet in the air and then people jump? So all fire escapes that are incomplete must have a complete stair, and that stair is either a drop ladder on a weight, and we'll show you some of those. It can be a fold-out ladder, so it looks like a drain pipe when it's closed. It can be a counterbalance stair that comes down, but can it ever be just something where you jump down to the ground? So all fire escapes that are examined are going to be incomplete. And of course, fire escapes must remain unobstructed. No cans, no bicycles, no nothing on a fire escape. No potted plants, no tomatoes, no barbecues. All right, let's take a look at all the 4 codes. Let's see if all the 4 codes say the same thing. So the International Fire Code says, all exterior fire escapes shall be examined or tested for structural adequacy every 5 years, and a report submitted to the fire official. Okay? The NFPA says the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. The International Fire Code says all exterior fire escape systems shall be examined and or tested, repaired, and for structural adequacy and safety in lieu of a load test. So what's that mean? So the building code, the fire code, the NFPA, they all say what? The same thing. And doesn't your code in Ohio say that you're authorized to require testing or other evidence of strength? Which means what? Is it always going to be a load test? Or can you get other evidence of strength? So other evidence of strength is what? Can I spot repair it and call that other evidence of strength? And leave behind 50 to 75-year-old bolts and rivets? But if I remove and refurbish it at this time, a fire escape. So let's go through the life of a building. Every building swaps their windows. Every 75-year-old building has swapped their windows once or twice. You agree? Has swapped all their electrical inside that building once or twice. Has swapped out all their plumbing inside that building once or twice. Has swapped out the roof once or twice in 75 years. Has done the outside skin of the building once or twice. Have they ever did anything to the fire escape other than throw paint at it? So on average, every fire escape, in order to meet the other evidence of strength, needs to have their bolts swapped every 25 years. That avoids the load test. So if somebody spot repairs the fire escape, what can you pull out of your back pocket because you're not confident? And I don't care if you get it from the most expensive engineering firm that says the fire escape is good, here's my opinion, it's great. What can you order immediately if there was just spot repairs and they left behind 50, 75 plus year old rivets and square head bolts that have no rust in them? But that rivet and that bolt is still 50, 75. What do you pull out of your back pocket to get that? The 4 codes tell you have the right to do. And they hear you. What you say? What do you pull out? So when somebody's trying to bully you into a situation to take a document, what do you say? Load test. Or give me, what's the other thing? Other evidence of strength. So can you, in conversations with any engineer, architect, or others that are acceptable to you, can you suggest strongly that they refurbish the fire escape at this time to avoid the load test? Whenever we do other evidence of strength, the average is 15 to 25 years. So now the state of Oregon, which is going through one of its final revisions, wants that to be put into the state document that says, if you refurbish your fire escape, load testing is not required for 25 years. 25 years later, you still have the 5-year inspection rule, which 25 years later is when you have to do a load test. Or at that time in 25 years, what do they recommend you do to reset the clock? Change all the fasteners. All the major fasteners, not every little rivet on the slats, not every little rivet on the picket, all major structural. So this is not a full refurb. So if there's a minor structural connection there that's holding a scroll, is holding a bar, and should it fail, it's not catastrophic, do you need to change that bolt? You only need to change the major structural. And the last one that only Superman can see is the x-ray between the building. What happens between this wall and the outside wall? How do you verify that? You verify that by load testing, or you verify that by opening up the inside wall and looking at the connection on the inside, or opening it up on the outside. But can I also negate it? Can I take a connection on an old building, 50, 75 years old, and right next to that connection that is buried 8 to 12 inches deep only, can I put a 3/4 epoxy bolt and just duplicate that? So instead of spending $300 to $500 to verify something inside and outside, can I just put a $75 epoxy bolt right next to it and reconnect it back to the right back to the support and basically negate that, make it brand new? Will that satisfy you as the other evidence of strength? Because now I'm at 200% of whatever that was supposed to be. So that's how you avoid the load test. This is not a load test class. This is a class to say you have that in your pocket. You just didn't know it because all the 4 codes says the authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to accept a load test or other evidence of strength on any fire escape system. All 4 codes concur. This is the IFC for 2012. So let's read some of the key points here. Right now, existing exterior fire escapes require an inspection by a registered design professional or person acceptable to the fire code no more than every 5 years. So if you don't have it on your code, it's already there. It's coming. So sometimes you can reference other codes for a suggestion of what should be a normal inspection. If not, if you don't want to wait for this code to show up, have a local ordinance that says what? In my town, what do I want? I want them inspected every 5 years. Okay? It says right there, the fire code official is authorized to require testing or other satisfactory evidence. Same thing as it says in your code. Okay? Let's take a look at down below. Neither the IBC nor IFC contain a specific definition of what actually constitutes a fire escape. And in previous editions of the code, they did not establish a frequency for their inspections. The IBC provision for existing buildings only permits that fire escapes as a means of egress component on existing buildings and limits the installation of new fire escapes on existing buildings when the code official determines they are necessary based on a substantiation by a registered design profession or exterior stairway cannot be used due to the lot line limitation, size of the stair, or conditions where the fire escapes could impact the progress on the sidewalks, alleys, and such. Additionally, new fire escapes, when allowed by a building official, cannot utilize ladders or windows as a means of egress. Fire escapes are typically prohibited in new construction. Well, that's kind of wraps everything up for you, right? So can I dig a hole in the ground, putting up a brand new building. Any fire escapes? Never, okay? I have a pre-existing building, a mansion, and guess what? They're gonna make 5 lovely condos on it, all for $1.3 million a piece. And they have one central stair inside that's like a chimney stack in there. And they need to put fire escapes. Okay. Can you force them to put fire escapes inside that mansion? I mean, a staircase inside the mansion for every one of those condos? What can they do? What's allowed by law? A fire escape stair that unifies the whole thing, or everyone will have their own fire escape stair? Can they come out the windows, these beautiful mansion windows? No, what's the code says? What do you need? If there's going to be an egress, what do you need? Take to that window. Gotta make it a door. When I step out, now fire escapes are 24 inches wide, 8 and 8 rise and run. That's a fire escape. Because I have no lot lines, I'm limited in size. But if I have a huge backyard, guess what you're gonna make me put in? An exterior stair, which people call fire escapes for now. How many feet wide? Minimum? 3 feet wide. 7-Eleven rise and run. In some cases they even want you to put a cap over it for the snow. And so now I'm coming out a door, coming out on a 3-foot platform, stepping down a set of stairs, 7-Eleven, can I bring my couch up and down that thing? Sure. Can I bring it up a 24-inch fire escape? Most fire escapes will come out a window. Again, whenever, this is where you have the power, usually from the building department. You guys are gonna be writing the violations, but you gotta make sure that what comes back from this is not a fire escape coming out of a window 24 inches wide, 8-inch rise and run all the way to the ground. And if there's a ladder on it, does this say you can put a ladder on it? Ladders are not allowed. There's no more ladders ever. Now, sometimes a ladder in a spiral will be allowed when there's a restriction. There's nothing else that will fit in there. It has to be a ladder. Can you throw it once you've met that requirement? Otherwise, can you do ladders ever? Okay? So it's all written right here, and again, IFC 2012. We haven't adopted 2012 here yet, right? It's a great one. Write this one down. OSHA 1910.37. It's very important. It says exit routes must be maintained during construction, repairs, and alterations. Most fires happen when they're drilling holes in walls, when they're ripping things out and pushing things in and throwing nails into the thing. And what happens? So wouldn't you expect that if you're going to pull a permit with your building department, that the building department has confirmed that the construction company that's pulling that demo permit, changing, doing that one floor in an existing condo complex, gutting it completely, that they have and there's a fire escape on the backside where they want to confirm that it's safe for the current occupants as well as the workers working on it. OSHA said so. And then also means when the firemen show up, what do they need to have? Now, it doesn't mean you shut down the job. If the fire escape is a total wreck, shut the fire escape down, what do you build? Scaffolding. So you don't stop anything. You stop the money train, fire escapes are going to go back to where they belong, underneath the rug in the back room, because we are the bastard child of egress. So don't ever stop the money train. Just know that there's an answer to it, and the answer is, since you're not using this fire escape, just give me a second means of egress, installed by a licensed and insured scaffolding company. They'll have railings, they'll have the 36-inch wide, they won't have construction stairs in there, they'll have full means of egress stairs. Got it? Now, during, what's this mean that we're going to be suggesting to you today with your building department buddies, is that during the process of pulling a permit, or during the process of closing a permit, some cities will put this OSHA requirement or the closing of the permit to ask for the certificate on the fire escape at the end. So it depends on how you want to do it. We highly recommend for the first 3 to 5 years you put this closure of the permit and the certification of the fire escape on the tail, but then work it to the front to make sure that it's that you don't ruffle too many feathers. Because it's all about, the right thing is in the front, but ruffling of the feathers could happen right off the bat if you do that. You know what I'm saying? In Boston right now, you can't close a permit until you submit the fire escape affidavit. So whether you're changing a light bulb or changing a toilet, all of a sudden when you're closing the permit, the city official will ask the owner and or the vendor for what? A copy of the fire escape affidavit. And everybody goes, what? What's that? So they don't stop the permit closure. You close the permit and you're done. But it issued another violation, and that is you don't have proper certification. Okay? Now, as I'm going along here, guys, ask questions. So I'm going to try my best to fly through and tell you as much as I can about what's working out there, but you need to also say, hey, I have a question, you agree or disagree. Again, I know I have a knowledge of code, but I'm limited in my code, but a lot of you guys here already know the code. So if somebody here has a question about the code, hopefully somebody else on the other side of the room can answer that concern for them if there's any stepping on the code of any kind going on, okay? So let's talk about the checklist. What's this mean? You guys you don't need to have a fire escape squad going out and walking alleyways and start painting these fire escapes with tags or something like that. You need to have them find you. So you need to create a checklist. So it took 75 years to screw this up. It's going to take 3 to 5 years to put this back together. Okay? So what's that mean in the checklist? Starting with fire prevention. You guys have certain things you do that if you add this to your checklist, it would let people know that you need this in order to complete your process. So one of the biggest things is smoke detector sign off, right? So as soon as somebody gets their smoke detector sign off, they can occupy, right? So when the smoke detector goes off and there's a fire, where do I go? I go to an interior stair or I go to an exterior stair. So that alarm is going to ring, and when you're telling somebody, I did a great job of the installation of this smoke detector, but now I need a copy of your affidavit. You're not ordering an inspection on the fire escape, you're asking for a copy that their fire escape has been certified in a reasonable past time. They say, what's that? Or what are you talking about? Do you stop the smoke detector sign off? No, you got to keep that going. Don't stop the money train. But what did it trigger? Is that smoke detector sign off complete? Or is it incomplete? So you sign it off, let them occupy, but then you say, okay, until further notice, you've got 30 days to give me this. Now, can you always revisit the issue in the future if all of a sudden 45 days go by, 60 days go by, and they haven't given you your certificate? Well, that's a whole different issue. That has nothing to do with the fact that you gave them their smoke detector sign off. Got it? So don't stop the money train. Some of the other things that you can link in. When a sprinkler company, what's the cycle of sprinkler inspection? Every year? 2 years? Every year? Imagine you ask now, this is how you get everybody else to work with you, you ask every sprinkler company to provide with you not only the sprinkler system test, but a copy of the affidavit. And that affidavit is good for 5 years, so once they have the first affidavit, you know what they can keep attaching to that? The same affidavit. But if all of a sudden now the sprinkler system companies need to give you a copy of that, because when the sprinklers go off, where do you run to? All right? I got another idea here, yearly inspections. For a lot of business, you have that yearly inspection. You're checking the alarm, you're checking the lights, you're checking the battery. What else you ask for when you're leaving the place? So checklist, just add it to the checklist. Don't go looking for this stuff, just add it to your checklist. And the second means of, I don't know if you have a safe building policy here where you basically confirm that buildings are safe. Do you have a safe building program? What is it? If it's called something different? But basically, what would you ask for that? They have this, they have their alarms, they have their extinguishers, they have this, they have that, and what do you add to that list now? Even if you handwrite it in for now. And add a copy of the affidavit. Building permits. So imagine in the building permit, what do you need to do a building permit? I need my license, I need my insurance, I need a plot plan, I need an engineer's plot sign, I need to make sure my taxes are paid. I got all these things that they won't let me pull a permit until I do all these other things. What do you need to add to it? Which will satisfy OSHA. Second means of ingress affidavit. Now you can either put it at the beginning of the permit process or bring it in at the end to close the permit process, because then it's going to move itself to the beginning. So you're going to work with your building departments. Now also certificates of occupancy. Sometimes on re-rentals and new ownership. What does the building? Who does that? Is the building department or fire department that does the new ownership and the re-rentals?
The building department does it.
What is it?
The building department always does it. That's what's so frustrating.
Well, this is where you would ask them to basically ask for a copy. Should one not come in, they still do their process, but what do they give you? A name of somebody at an address that does what? Does not have a certificate on file. Housing. In Boston, we have many classes that we've done with housing inspectors. You can't rent a one-family, two-family, or three-family residential style home to HUD or to any Section 8 without having a fire escape affidavit, which before they didn't care. So a lot of times you guys can't even touch those buildings. You're not getting anywhere near the residentials, right? But who does use a lot of the residentials? It's HUD, Section 8 housing. And so how do you get your nose into that one is because they need to have an affidavit to consider it a safe building. So that's where if you have a housing division, this is some of the stuff that they need. Health department. How many times have health departments shut down an apartment? For mold, cockroaches, you name it. If they get the person out for whatever reason, to get the person back in, what do they need to confirm? That it's a safe building or it's a safe structure, which means they need to get what? A copy of the affidavit. So here's 4 groups that you can put a sort of band together, because all the information is going to come back to you. Because they don't want to work it. They'll give you a name, they'll give you a reference, but guess what they don't want? They don't want any more work. All right. Now, you guys remember the Station Night Fire? 2003, 100 people died. Right then, Channel 7, Channel 5. There's all these channels. If you want to get some stories out there, the power of the pen, very mighty. So Channel 7 wanted to do a story on fire escapes and say, hey, people, even though a bunch of people died in a nightclub fire, in case there's a fire, use your fire escape, because firemen ain't use them. But and I said, hey, by the way, do you know that 75% of everything I inspected nationwide fails? And of that, 25 to 50% has life safety concerns. She goes, I don't believe you. So I brought her down. Hank Philippi Ryan, she's only about 12 feet 10. She's one of those investigative reporters that's very aggressive. And she said, I don't believe you. So I brought her into downtown Boston, near the theater district. I gave her a 15-minute class on how to inspect fire escapes. I mean, obvious stuff. Dangling treads, obvious stuff. And that 1-minute show she wanted to do actually turned into this.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him,
Oh, I was scared to death.
but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
Where the railing just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes. So then over here? For months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Correct.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or it's going to put somebody in a cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files,
But there's no fire escape certification.
Not in this file.
to see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No.
4 more fire escapes,
Did it fall through the cracks? Yeah.
not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track.
How can they get away with that?
I guess that the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this? No?
But when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. In Boston, where there are more than 8,000 fire escapes, again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation when you don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress it enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Philippi-Ron.
So immediately right after that, right now, and what Boston did, even if it was a knee-jerk reaction, they basically made it so that every permit to close the permit needs to have a fire escape affidavit. So they didn't put it at the beginning, they put it at the end, and just so they go look for fire escapes, but did the fire escapes find them every day? So they can now say, hey, I'm doing something about it because every day we issue these violations every day. But who rings the bell? It's a building permit rings the bell. Comes in, they fill it, they check the toilet, they do this, and then to close the permit, what do we ask for? So you got to get building department involved to at least give you references that says, hey, I closed another permit, guess what he didn't give me? And guess who writes the violation? They do or you do? Because if he's giving you the reference, who's going to write the violation? Got it? That's how you're going to have control. Yes, questions?
Why is he closing the permit if he doesn't have to?
Because that's natural. That's what you've been doing for 75 years. So don't change the process. We'll change it later. But in the meantime, all you're doing is saying, you know, because it's not a requirement to have an affidavit given to you. They just put it on the back end to start getting after these fire escapes that nobody's doing. So by just at the end saying, okay, thanks for the permit. By the way, I need a permit, an affidavit for your fire escape. Do you have one? I just changed the toilet. See what I'm saying? It's totally unrelated. They just put it on the end to basically make it a checklist item that says, we are closing all permits regardless of what you did on the building. Oh, I just did my roof. I just changed the window, you know, whatever. I don't care. We need an affidavit. So all of a sudden now they close the permit. So the building department's done. You don't want to give them any more work. But now they got a reference for the fire department, which is what? We closed 15 permits. 5 of them didn't have affidavits. That's it. What's those 5 names and what are those 5 addresses? That's all you need, and you'll take it from there. Got it? Because now there's an unsafe structure or a building that doesn't have an affidavit. All right. So you saw what happened. It took a collapse. The fireman didn't die on this one, but the woman did. They fell 4 stories. Got it? And this photograph won a Pulitzer Prize. So if that's what you guys want, here's the thing. We got hand grenades and landmines all over your state. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I had a very similar class like this in Philadelphia, which we're going to talk about today. And 9 months later, guess what happened? It was a collapse of 3 people. 1 died. There's a lawsuit, and guess who they're bringing in as the expert witness? You know what I'm saying? And not because my ambulance was not working that day because I usually chase, but this is what it takes. A lot of times somebody has to go down, and when it's a fireman, everybody starts freaking out. You know what I'm saying? When it's a fireman and a woman and a baby, it gets even worse.
Witnesses say it sounded like an incredible explosion when the fire escape of a Philadelphia apartment building suddenly collapsed and injured 3 people.
NBC 10 cameras were there as a friend holds on to one of the victim's hands, who is apparently conscious as the victim is placed into an ambulance by medics.
KYW-TV reports a man who was critically injured and 2 women were rushed to local hospitals.
Police believe the bolts of the fire escape appear to have been rusted and dislodged from the brick wall of the apartment building.
The victims fell more than 30 feet to the ground, and now the incident is under investigation. Worth noting, the complex is more than 100 years old and even on Philadelphia's historic registry. Local reporters are all pointing out the city's licenses and inspections department hasn't filed any violations in the past when it comes to the old building, so Sunday's collapse came without warning. Neighbors say the 3 victims, reportedly all in their 20s, may have been partying on the fire escape landing before the incident. For Newsy, I'm Elizabeth Hagedorn.
That's what did it. They were partying on the fire escape. You know, fire escapes ain't rated for parties. It wasn't the fact that they haven't had a violation in that building for 50 years. Philadelphia and New York City is by far one of the worst locations. When I go there, if I'm seeing an average on the U.S., and just like that story that you saw about this with Hank Philby Ryan, I could take Boston out of there, and I'll talk to you about this city I have inspected in Cleveland. It's the same situation, every state. So if I go from Seattle to San Diego, I go from Chicago to Texas, and I go to any major city, and I go to Cleveland, and I have inspected, including, I've inspected the Masonic Lodge. Fire escapes are in a state of collapse. Nothing has passed. Anything I've ever inspected in your state has never passed. So it's not just specific to certain areas. Every industrialized city that has, 5 or 10-story buildings, has an infrastructure of some sort, has fire escapes because everybody's stacked. Guess what? The fire escapes are not safe, okay? So on this one, I actually happened to be in Philadelphia examining fire escapes when this came over the news, and I went by the site.
Fire escape engineers inspect the summary video. We're here in Philadelphia. All right. Some of the preliminary information that I'm getting out of this is that this piece here, which this is the back, used to be up against the building. These 2 brackets here used to be going to that 4th, 5th floor up there, where you now see the 2 blowouts. The blowout on the left and the blowout on the right. And it used to be attached there. And then this staircase which is here, it went to that platform up there. And that platform up there also had a bracket which is now laying inside the floor below. So they either were going up to that upper floor or they were on this fire escape. And as soon as it let go on this side or up above, which looks like it's all blown out, as soon as it let go there, it basically tore away and fell down, or the bracket that holds one of the legs, one of these legs is sitting on a bracket like this, and it's up there. You can see it on the floor below there. See, there's the bracket right there, and there's the other piece that's stuck in the wall. There's the hole in the wall it used to be. That bracket was there to that corner, and it used to support the staircase that used to go to that other top corner there. So that's how this piece got its way down here, and it kind of did this. But the key is, this is what it looked like, that bracket that used to hold one of the corners, and then it would go from here up to a window that's not here, but it's way up there. But so basically when this released or that other piece released, it pulled away and brought this with it, or if this failed first and then it released the remaining piece. But I believe everybody was either up above on this piece. But see how it ties into the back? Single bolt with an angle on the back. So this down here represents that there's an angle along the back, an angle along the wall, okay? And this platform is pretty shoddy, but basically creating a corner supported only by this brace. This brace goes into the building, and so should that corner fail, which it did, basically this brace is no longer holding the staircase that came from the upper platform way up above and fed that upper window. So if they were on the platform up itself, 2 or 3 people, but look at that whole piece there. That looks like that's not fresh. That looks like it's old. Looks like it's been through rust jacking, ice jacking, and just maybe the cement was getting porous, and it basically pulled away from there.
So again, it's a little longer tape that I can let you watch with. Again, the class is short. But you see, even months later when I went back there, this is only a few days later, but even months later when I went back, nothing was done. They're still investigating. The building was still fully occupied, even though we had fire escapes. And what happened? This is an example of what was happening up there. As water gets behind any fire escape, what does it do to the steel that's inside the building? It corrodes it and eats it, and it becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. What does it do to the outside steel that's actually exposed to the air? Looks perfect. So as soon as you get anything that's compact and stuck inside something, and you surround it with wet cement and wet dirt and pigeon poo, and what's it doing? It stays wet all its life. What does it do to that steel embedded in the wall? It corrodes it. Now, don't forget that the brick on this is the veneer. That's your vinyl siding. That's not what holds a fire escape in the air. It's what, once you get beyond the brick and into the block wall behind it, that's where you tie in. But between every veneer and every block wall, what do you got? That ½ inch of what? Cavity. And when it starts raining on the roof and it comes down that little ½ inch cavity, what's it do to the metal that's right there behind the veneer brick, but in between the block wall? It does this. Now, would a load test identify this? If you had a building that had all this, it was all bad on the inside, and you load tested, would this make it self-evident? So had they load tested that a week or a month before, would it have collapsed under a load test? Because that's just 3 people. Remember what kills people? Is it parties and 3 people? Or is it, can it hold 30 people and it still won't give way if it's properly maintained? Right? So did the fact that they were on the building, on the fire escape, to collapse that? Or is it impossible to put all its entire occupants on there and make it collapse? It's over-engineered. For firemen, for people, for everybody, and it still has 1,000 pounds more than it can hold beyond what the physical capacity can hold. Got it? So the water that gets behind that you can't see, that comes out, and we call them dragon tears. So whenever you're looking at a fire escape, you get all these rusty, long tears. We call them dragon tears, rusty tears. That's telling you what's happening inside. It's all rusty. It can't go anywhere, so where's it go? It goes out and down the side of the building. There's another fire escape collapse, right? This is called live load testing. with real live people, then some of them die. So this is one where people were basically, the owner and his sons fixed the roof themselves, took all the bolts out, and when they put the fire escape back, they had extra bolts. What do you need them for? Like any great mechanic, what do they always have behind in the box? That were never needed. I don't know why Ford has these extra bolts. They're not really needed. So this was actually during a sale that was selling one of the condos. So a buyer and a real estate agent, a seller and a real estate agent, plus one of the trustees was on there. And this is 3 fire escape systems exactly like that. It collapsed and it fell to the ground. But it wasn't the ground. It actually fell 1 floor below on a roof. They were so lucky nobody died. But everybody had their speed dials calling who? Attorneys, who then call who? Fire departments, right? That's the order.
A startling scene in downtown Colorado Springs Wednesday after a man falls to his death.
I was just walking up the street to get to the bus stop, and the cops were right there, told me I couldn't come this way.
Police say the victim and several others were working on the roof of this privately owned building when the man fell.
He may have fallen a distance of anywhere from 15 to 20 feet is what's being investigated right now.
Tragically, the man died on scene. It's believed he fell from the fire escape and not the roof or a window, although how it happened is still unknown.
That's what's being investigated right now to determine the actual cause of the accident itself.
Right now, police say the death is not criminal and is being called an industrial accident.
There were several witnesses, individuals who were working with the deceased party, and so we've interviewed them as witnesses in this investigation.
It's really sad. I feel bad for his family. I mean, I don't know him, but prayers and best wishes to his family for sure.
Others in the area expressing similar concerns and well wishes, visibly distraught by the day's events.
I mean, I can't even imagine it, just coming out to do your job one day and just fall off a building. Like, it's really sad.
So what happened there, because I got called by OSHA on that, but here's some of the details. This was a cantilever with a weight cable on the nose going up to a pinwheel and then a weight box up in the bottom. So these guys were trying to make it to come down so they could use the fire escape to access the roof and work on the roof. Is that a good idea? Work on a non-certified fire escape and use it as a means of getting up? Well, should they have a crane? Should they have all these things? Because are you supposed to use a fire escape as a work platform? Right? So the guy went out there because he needed to make the cantilever weight and come back down. So he went out to the very tip and he started jumping up and down. Guess what happened? Nothing happened. So he has 2 more of his buddies who you saw the photo that says, hey guys, come on out here and help me stand on the edge because this thing won't go down. And when the other 2 buddies went out, that's when it collapsed. The cable snapped and it caught him underneath here. So what do you think happened? I mean, you can fall 15 feet and get hurt. But what happens when a cable, a whipping cable, a steel whipping cable, about a half-inch thick, let's say, catches you under your neck? That's what they didn't mention there, but that's what happened. Got it? There's another case here in Iowa. We were brought into Iowa at one of the universities. How many universities in the state of Ohio? So we were brought there because on this building, they needed to fix some of the vinyl. So what did the workers do? They basically removed some of the through bolts, fixed the window and the vinyl, and then they put the fire escape back, and they put some lag screws where there used to be through bolts on one side. And when there was a fireworks display on July 4th and 3 kids went up there, what do you think occurred when they went to get a better vantage point of the fireworks? It went boom, boom, boom to the ground. We went to they put all the pieces in a secured location, which was basically a lot that the guy owned down the street, and they threw all the pieces in a lot. And we found the smoking gun. So even though they didn't properly secure the evidence, when we got there, now this is all lawyers and fire officials and building officials all walking this grassy knoll here, and what do we find? They asked to secure the evidence, and they did. They threw it in the field somewhere. The guy owned down the street.
Matching paint. You know, primer, match.
The smoking gun, guys. They put a lag screw, a half-inch lag screw in a half-inch hole. And what does that do for security and stability?
And this was the little leg.
Got it? So they put it back with through bolts, and And they were so unsure of themselves, they also put a leg to the ground on top of the roof. On top of a pressure-treated sleeper, or right onto the roof asphalt and shingles, this metal pole. Right? So, live load testing. Let's talk about live load testing. You guys see this all the time in a lot of your buildings that are now non-smoking buildings. What's the new designated smoking area, guys? Fire escapes. You guys remember this? Whenever there's a parade, whenever there's anything, sometimes paramedics for some reason can't get somebody out. Where do they pull them out from? By the way, guys, as you can see there's a guy working on a fire escape. Fire escapes kill everybody. One of our guys out of Chicago, his dad, 57 years old, fell 7 stories to his death, touching the wrong bolt. Well, pulling the wrong connection. So guess who it eats? It has no discretion. It'll kill anybody. So tenants, firemen, workers, all get killed on fire escapes. Who inspects fire escapes? The law is very clear, it's right in there. Design professionals or others acceptable to the building official. So if you have an expertise in fire escapes, or that instructors, fire protection engineer or something like that, and you have somebody come to your office and say, hey, this is what I do, let me prove to you what I do. Otherwise, guaranteed that you must accept, whether they're incompetent or not, is design professionals. So if a structural engineer or anybody with an engineer comes in, a lot of times you have to accept them. Architects, landscape architects have signed off on these things. Why? Because the code is too vague. You should be working with structural engineers and others acceptable to the building official. Got it? Who else? So in the code it says engineers are acceptable, architects are acceptable, fire escape. Oh, by the way, sometimes they think you guys are inspecting their fire escape because they come and say, hey, the guy was here. He told me to fix one tread. That's it. How much to fix that one tread? Because that's all he wrote the violation on. And we're like, no, he wants a whole evaluation. No, and they hang up on you because what are they looking for? The guy that listens to them and says, I want you to come, give me an evaluation on one rail bolt, one tread bolt, and then say it's fine so I can get this city official off my back. There's also fire escape inspectors. Guys, I founded the National Fire Escape Association 2 years ago because I had so much data that I had to put it somewhere. So that's all it is. This is my own personal library of information. But do you know there's only 2 licenses in the whole country? I have a Rank 4 license out of the state of California, LA. So if you guys want to copy a great system where they charge me $1,000 to get my license, I have to go through 100 question tests, or not just me, every sprinkler guy, every alarm guy, every fire protection has to be licensed, and we have to pay our license every 3 years, guys. So if you want a system, LA's got it down to a science. So there's fire escape, and I have a Boston license. And my flaw with a Boston license is that the G3, not only can I fix my stuff, inspect the stuff, I can sign off on this stuff. Any chicken in the hen house issues? Don't tell anybody. So here you have investigations by engineers. So just because you have an engineer, sometimes you get a one-piece paper that says the fire escape needs a couple things done. This fire escape, in your estimation, pass or fail, right? The engineer that wrote the violation, the engineer that wrote the write-up, wrote a one-pager on this, and this is the one-pager. He says, fix something on the 3rd floor, fix something on the 2nd floor, give it a paint job, and I'll sign off on it. But at the very bottom, isn't there a little disclaimer? You can't read it because it's kind of small, but guess what it says? To the best of my information, knowledge, and belief. So is it an evaluation, or is it an opinion affidavit? It's an eyeball test, right? Now, you can see the photographs next to it. I failed the fire escape. Thank God it was white, because all the red shows up really, really good. Those are all fails. There's another one I did in Chicago, 150 units. And I got this one-page letter, and the guy wanted a price. Guess what? Fix it or paint it? They just wanted a paint job. I said, well, no problem. I'll give you a price to paint it. And I do my own walkthrough just to make sure that everything is good. So when I walk through it, because they said the only thing it needs is some painting. So is this painting? This is the same fire escapes. Is that painting? Now, when I brought this to the attention of the management company, guess what they said? When I brought it to the building department.
I know too.
When I brought it to the building department, guess what they said? Well, we rely on the engineer. If an engineer wants to put his license on the line and blah, 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 that kind of comes. I just need a piece of paper to stick in the file. Now, can you take that same piece of paper and bring it out when you got a dead fireman and give that piece of paper to his family? Say, hey, I hope this will help you feel better, but there was an engineer's piece of paper here that maybe you can bring to the bank and, right? Because if they have that disclaimer on there that says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, what is that? Isn't that the golden escape parachute? Now, we were involved in Chicago in a lawsuit, but I was on the other side. One of the pieces of a fire escape that we dealt with came off because a masonry company was using it to work with and smashing that cantilever 5 to 10 times a day to go up and down. A piece broke off and hit one of their guys in the head. Guess what that guy did? Who'd he sue? Everybody. You know, everybody got so over 7 people in the lawsuit, including Chicago. Now, when we were sitting in deposition, this took 7 years. And guess what they try to blame? The guy who touched the fire escape. Guess who touched the fire escape? Guess what? The city of, we did a total refurb on the job. This was a well that broke. We changed our policy on wells, which I'll talk to you guys about this afterwards. It basically, it gave us all the information that we're sharing with you today that says, listen, if you accept an opinion, can you be dragged into a court case? The law says test or other evidence of strength. They didn't give you that. They gave you an opinion affidavit. They neither tested it nor gave you any other evidence of strength. They gave you an opinion and you accepted, like Chicago did. What happened? You're involved in the lawsuit. Got it? Because the code didn't say, you know, low test, other evidence of strength, or a friendly opinion. Did anybody have a friendly opinion amended to that thing? So if you don't have friendly opinion amended on there, you want what the codes. What codes say that? Well, the IFC, IBC, NFPA, and what do they all say? The authority having jurisdiction. So who calls for load test? The engineer, the architect? Who calls for the load test? The authority having jurisdiction. So you guys, like I said, you guys know, you knew this, but you didn't know this. Though the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. You're always going for the other evidence of strength, but when somebody bullies you for any reason, what do you pull out of your pocket? When you got somebody with more credentials than you have, and they built some skyscraper in downtown, what do you tell that engineer that's trying to bully you into taking his opinion on his letterhead?
Show me a load test.
Show me. He's not going to show you a load test. He has to prepare for it. He has to tell you how it's going to be done. There's a whole process and show you what the load test criteria is going to be. You have the right to witness it. So whenever you're getting bullied around, you basically pull out the 3 codes. They've always been there. These have not changed. So all these code changes, all these codes are still in 2009, 2011, 2015, 2017. They're not going to play with fire escape codes. We get 1-2 lines in the whole book. They've never changed this in 100 years. You just never read that under the maintenance you're supposed to have a load test. You had a load test card. Not the, you're not supposed to ask an engineer, what's your opinion? You think I should load test it? It says right there, the authority having jurisdiction, that's you. This is a detention center for juveniles. So when I walked up to it, I found this underneath. So if your 6-month sentence or your 17-month sentence doesn't get you, what could get you? Fall in the fire escape piece is falling. When we go up a fire escape, one of the things we have is a 3-pound hammer. Now that is not part of the load testing. That is a safety test to make sure that we can physically walk up the fire escape safely. So if you ever want to see what it looks like when you go up a bad fire escape, unless you want to start carrying around little ping hammers, 3-pound little baby sledges, right? Because some of the rust is 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. So next time you walk up fire escape and you're about to fight the fire, bring a hammer with you and do this. I think that's it, yeah. Okay guys, let's fight the fire. I think that's it.
And what I'll do now is I have my red, highlighted
So
red.
what this is a we call it the ping pong test. So if I'm going on a fire escape, when I hit it, and even though it might have some rust in it, but it's solid because I got something left of the shaft, what's it going to ring like? It's going to ring like a ping. When I've got rust in there, the shaft is gone and it's compressing it because of rust expansion is what's holding it there, and I hit it, I get a thud, it goes pong. So when we go up to inspect the fire escape for our own safety, not as part of the examination as far as a load test of any kind, it's ping, ping, pong. As soon as we had a pong, we knock it down because, and then we identify it with spray or we identify it with a small little yellow tag of tape. Oh, I didn't want to get to this one right away, but how many of you have ever trained on a fire tower? The room got really quiet, and I don't think it's the apple pie. So it's funny because every time I go to every state, you know, we've got all these cities that are just not compliant, non-compliant, and this. And then when I ask the fire prevention to take me to the training facility so I can look at their fire towers, guess what happens? So I show up there, and as you know, the outside part of it is for you guys to train. The inside part, you guys throw, you know, hay and all kinds of things to create smoke, and you're constantly bombarding the inside with water. Guess what it does to the inside staircase that is fire resistant, right? So when you look at it, right, I started ping-ponging the thing and I shut this tower down like I do many towers, because guess what happens? Men have been running up and down this thing the day before. And I ping-ponged the thing and I shut it down that day. So both inside and outside, these fire towers are doing what? So what's going to kill you? The actual fire, or training for an actual fire is going to get you hurt? So this is some more rust. This is how heavy rust can get. You let rust grow. This right here is in a veteran's home. This is fire escapes on a veteran's home. Most of these guys were 70 to 90 years old. Trash trucks. Cement trucks that are 12 to 14 feet high. What do you think they do to this stuff? In alleyways. Housing complexes. Now this is important. That one right there, that building right there, that's actually City Hall. And look at in the middle stairs, look at all the dangling stairs on it at City Hall. All right? So schools, you guys know that when you do a fire drill and you have an old school building, and if you have a charter school and they use old buildings that used to be office space and such, you know, in your fire drill, you're supposed to go to the nearest exit. You know how many times they use the fire escape during their fire drills? Never. It is a good thing. But that's because they know what's going to happen. They're not only going to scare the kids to death on these things, but they don't want to test it, because a lot of these fire escapes at charter schools and old schools, and how many colleges have these beautiful old mansions that they've spent 50 grand on the marble floor on the foyer when you walk in, and when you tell them to spend 10 grand on the fire escape, what do they look at you and say? You got big one? Are you crazy? Right? And it's the fire escape on a lot of the older dorms, a lot of the older buildings that are still making part of that, because they're all historically preserved now, and they'll spend $1 million renovating the inside. They won't spend a nickel on the fire escape. And currently there's no way to put another staircase inside that building because the historical preservation won't let you. Speaking of that, while we're on the hysterical committee, is that hysterical? They now say that you got a 10-story, 20-story building and you've gutted the inside, new stairs, new elevators inside, and what do they want you to keep on the outside? The fire escape. Because it's part of the look, you know. So now you got this rotten piece of steel that they won't let you take off the building because you've met the requirements inside, because it's part of the look of the outside. So there's an answer there, yes?
I have a question for you. You're talking about the sororities and fraternities. You see a lot of them with the fire escape teams, houses now. Is it still legal to put those on as a second week?
Sure.
So you can still do it today?
Yes. Any existing building, if you want to save it, otherwise you will be ripping down buildings that are beautiful buildings. A fire escape is the final answer. It will answer any and all means of egress. So you take a mansion that is ready to be knocked down that somebody wants to buy, but turn it into 4 apartments, 4 condos, rooming houses, or whatever it may be. The safe way to do it is that they will attach and pick up every single window, every single system with an external fire escape system, and no ladders. And that building will have another 50 years of life. That's just natural. Just, you know, otherwise knock the thing down. No doctor is going to buy a money pit and put a bunch of money into it for 25% of the value, and he can build a brand new mansion somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? But there's a lot of buildings that is its second life, and a fire escape can answer. I mean, I've got factories where fire escapes are the answer. Barns where the fire escape is the answer. Basically, you need to get people from the second floor, the third floor, down to the ground, and you can squeeze a fire escape anywhere on the back of a building, on the side of the building. And don't fight the fire escapes, because they will make buildings last another 50 years. Yes. Ornamental ironwork guys. So ornamental ironwork guys, welding guys, as long as somebody draws it up, so it's not something you can't build anymore. Nobody builds them anymore. So we're the last fire escape company in the nation, but we're not the only ones that can build fire escapes. So you still have ornamental ironwork guys that if an architect draws up a plan for a set of stairs, anybody can build it. Not many people have expertise in it. Well, again, if you're an ornamental shop, you're already an ornamental shop. You make I-beams, you make railings, and so you already have that license necessary. A design professional is the one that draws it up. There's a stamp on it from a structural engineer. There's a building permit involved with this vendor that is licensed and insured, overseen by the architect and designer. They took out together, they built this fire escape on the side of the building, and it's probably through, but you've got drawings on there. As a matter of fact, New Jersey put out a how to build a fire escape document, an FTO, I forgot the name, but it's basically, but the sad thing about it, when you look at it, it's information from 1925. So the fire escape is not using 4 or 5 inch flat on the side, it's using 10-inch junior C channels, and it's not using 2 by 2 by quarter angle, it's using 4 by 4 by 3/8 angle. It's like, but thank God at the very end it says, this is just some guidelines on how to build it, like the way we used to build it when we had plenty of free steel back in the 20s or whatever. It says, but if you have an engineer that can skinny this thing up and still stamp it, they'll accept. So you don't have to build it like this, but if you've never built one, we found this laying around, this is what you can use. Questions? Yes?
Can you comment on the, where they want to use the metal stringers and womanized wood for the threads?
Okay, so you're talking about, well, on your code, it says right there that, when you put, it must be made of non-combustible material, or it must match the building type. So every now and then when I'm building a fire escape, and you got it all metal fire escape and somebody wants to use wood, that has to be 1.5 inches thick. So it's got to be fire rated, okay? So does that, and again, the engineer would tell you whether or not it can span a certain amount. But yes, I've seen hybrid. You can actually have an all wood fire escape, but now everything is 1.5 inches thick because it's a wood structure. You can never have a wood structure on a factory because it has to match the building type and be fire rated. Okay? Questions? More? No? Yell it out. Now let's talk about welding, right? Here's the problem with welding, so you can understand. Anybody here holding a welding license or a certification? Okay, so the biggest issue is that everybody thinks welding became the Band-Aid. So if I have to fix a fire escape, I can either fix it with $3,000 or $30,000. Which one is cheaper for the client? I can either remove the rust or weld over the rust. Guess which one is cheaper for the client? Before anybody sees it, I can paint over everything and silicone shut it so you don't see any of the rust jacking. Which one is cheaper for the client? Which one makes the maximum amount of money? The welding guy that's going to be in and out in a day, or the structural guy that may be there for 10 days? You know what I'm saying? Well, the structural guy's 30 grand. The welding guy is going to be in and out, and you just wrote a violation. And here's what you write on your violations, which always causes a problem. I want you to scrape and paint your fire escape. So when we come and tell him he's got structural issues, you think that client is not going to reread his violation that you wrote? So never write, ever again, scrape and paint your fire escape on your violation. You must write what the code says. Evaluate, test, or certify your fire escape. But like, well, what's wrong with it? Well, I see a few things, but never write what you saw that's wrong, because they'll make us fix only that. You have a violation on your fire escape. I need a certification. I need it evaluated, tested, or certified. Isn't that what the code says? So they can call you a million times and say, what's it mean by evaluation? Well, call a design professional, all this is acceptable. They come in, do an evaluation, put a report to you, give me a copy of the report, hopefully they include photographs. What's test mean? Well, I need to load test it. So if you're going to spot repair your 50 to 75-year-old structure, I'm going to order a load test on you. So make sure your engineer or whoever you bring has information about load testing. Great. What's certification mean? I mean, if you do a significant amount of repair on your fire escape, what am I gonna not order on you? A load test, okay? So let's talk about welding, and let's talk about Boston. So right now, this is what happens when you weld a fire escape. All fire escapes in the US are bolted and riveted, because when it heats up in the summer, it does this. Because it has a common pin, right? When it cools down in the winter, it does this. So fire escapes were built to breathe and move. Now, when you have a fire escape that all of a sudden gets welded, that used to have a pin, and it heats up in the summer, what does it do? It tries to do this. When it cools down in the winter, it tries to do that. What happens to it? And it starts ripping your weld. Well, how do I know it ripped? Through a costly x-ray or radiograph. If I radiograph that at a huge expense, can I see microscopic ripping in the welds? So were fire escapes ever meant to be welded? No. So you have a bolt, you take a bolt, what do you put back in? Bolt. Got it? Now when fire escapes do this and move, what happens to the paint they used to have and seal it? It cracks and rips. So when paint that you paint over a fire escape cracks and rips, what happens to it? What does it open it up to do and receive? Not rust. To make rust, you need two things. I need air and water. And as soon as I do this with a fire escape and it rips that paint job I just did on it, what gets in there? One or the other or both. That's where you get corrosion. And that's where corrosion starts. And then, so the bolt that's in there, can I put in the most toughest bolt in the world, or a grade 5, a grade 8, a titanium, some new alloy? Does it really matter about that shaft? Or does it matter that you don't get any jacking? Well, because will jacking rip anything? A good bolt, an old bolt, a titanium bolt, or a grade 5 bolt, will it rip everything? So what really destroys a bolt is not that the bolt gave up on you, is that you have introduced tearing, and so it's ripping the bolt apart, and you introduced rust into it that eats it, so it's being eaten 365 days a year, plus it's getting torn. Got it? So a lot of these welding guys will just go in and weld over the rust, and if there's huge rust, and I'll get you in a second. If there's huge rust there, what do they do? What do they bring with them? 1/2-inch round bars, because what do you do with those 1/4-inch and half round bars? You lay them over the rust, and now you weld the tread to one side of your bar, and then you weld the round bar to the stringer, and what do you leave underneath it? The rust. A year later, when that rust has grown 1/16 more, just 1/16. What happened to the weld above? Ripped. When? Usually when you get on it. So this is a great project. This was on an elementary school, kindergarten through 8th grade. They called me during Christmas vacation. And you know who called me? Was it the fire official? Was it the building official? Was it the maintenance man from the building?
Somebody's mom.
The maintenance man from the building. But before I get to the story, tell me what's your question? You had a question?
Oh, I was going to say certain aspects of the thing are naturally welded. I mean, they were welded when they were manufactured. So you're kind of comparing. You shouldn't weld where a bolt goes, but if a tread was, welded to the beam, you're re-welding a former weld. That's a difference than putting a bolt back into it. So other than the fact that the EPA doesn't want you using flame or heat to the paint.
Right, but 98% of everything ever built since 1900 has been all mechanical fasteners. The grating was all with a rod and spacers. The way the grating was tied down to something was with a mechanical bolt. There was an angle clip that tied to the side, so everything. Just recently they started introducing some welding in certain components, but now those need to be radiographed or x-rayed, right? So now, you know what I tell when somebody has a beautifully welded, certified welder bracket? As soon as I put a gusset in here and I put 2 bolts, I keep their weld, and I introduce 2 bolts, do I need to x-ray or load test that weld ever again? And now I'm at 200% because by adding a bolt gusset to it, what have I done? I've negated the weld. It's still there. I don't get rid of it. I keep it. But to avoid you forcing me into a load test, what do? So I turn a lot of major structural only, not minor. So all the pickets are welded, I don't care. That's taps, with a hammer to see if they're loose. All major structural is what I need to x-ray, test, or verify through certification. So a lot of times I'll negate something. Just like tying into the building, it's all cemented there for 75 years. Want me to tear that open just to say it's good? Or right next to it, 6 inches away, I drill a 3/4 hole through the veneer into the block wall, and then I put an 8 to 12 inch epoxy bolt from Hilti, and it has plenty of information, and I just make a mechanical clip back there, keep the cement, repack it and seal it, a new epoxy bolt, and then what do I bring to you? Other evidence of strength. Because you're concerned about this 100-year-old structure that is kind of not looking so great. Well, it doesn't matter to me, I've tied in again. Got it? All right, so let's talk about this weld. You know how everybody welds? So on this school, this is one of the few times it was a 1-story fire escape, and it was so rotted that I actually wanted to keep it as a piece. So I had to save it. Instead of just going down and knocking it all down, I tried to save as much piece as I could. So in some of my classes, I actually would have this fire escape here. So before the show, we can actually look at an actual fire escape, but it's a small dog and pony show, for lack of a better word. But what we did is I showed you all the right things that you can do and all the wrong things that you can do on these fire escapes. So there are some of the answers that they would do. They would grab a fire escape. In the past 5 to 10 years, they put an angle on top because they can't fix it underneath. And what do? They tack weld all the grading, and then they tack weld it to the side. And by the way, did I pull a fire permit on this wood structure that's 100 years old while I'm tacking this whole thing up? Do I ever pull a fire permit? Never. Why? Because it's an accepted Band-Aid. So anybody has a fire escape and you just wrote a violation, you said scrape and paint, and there's a loose tread, guess who fixes the loose tread? With bolts or with weld? Ever any fire permits? Never. When I'm maintaining a fire escape, I need to pull a permit? Never. When I paint a fire escape, I need to pull a permit? Never. So for 75 years, who's been fixing these things? It should be the ornamental guys and the welding guys because they have some responsibility. But who's really fixing these things? Joe, fix-it guy, you know, florist, part-time landscaper, has some knowledge of the certification on his welding? So this is what it looks like. Now this is actually, I pulled this out of the ground, so all these pieces now, you see the bottom one right there? That's typical. When you get there, you don't have to weld from the top. You weld the nose of it the best you can, even though it's full of rust, which this one is. I welded the nose for what reason? Because that's where everybody welds, because that's where all the pressure is. Even though there's rust growing behind it, I weld that nose. So how many years is that going to be good for? Is it good for 5, 10 more years? Or is it good for another year maybe? Because as the rust grows 1/16, what happens to that weld on the nose? Got it? So this is the piece. It used to be a 4-foot fire escape. Okay? And that 4-foot fire escape, I shrunk it down to a 2-footer. And then I basically did everything wrong to it so I can bring it to these shows and show how it's done wrong. And by the way, the EPA let me weld on this rusty fire escape, and you notice any paint on this fire escape? So if there was any lead, you know where it's gone? All the little kids ate it at the school, remember? Because they need something. This was in their recess yard. This fed them out the door to a recess yard. So every day with their little hands going down the railing, what did they do after they went down with their little hands? Put it all over themselves, right? So there's no paint. This is how I found it. This is what it looked like before. And I only had a Christmas break of 10 days to get it out and install the new one. And instead of it coming straight out, I actually made it come out and go to the right. But this is how I found it, and the maintenance guy is the one that made me take it away. So all the yearly inspections that they had in there, both by fire and building department, did they ever say there's a problem with the fire escape? Now, because of welding on a fire escape, this happened.
Boston Mayor Marty Walsh acknowledging that lax enforcement by the city could have contributed to the Back Bay fire that claimed the lives of 2 firefighters. Welders working next door may have been working on the building's fire escape when they sparked the deadly fire. Fox Undercover revealed Wednesday that fire escape hadn't been inspected in 10 years, even though inspections are required every 5 years. Investigative reporter Mike Bodette digging up some new exclusive information tonight. Mike?
We looked at the entire Beacon Street block where the fatal fire happened and discovered, just like 296 Beacon Street, most of the fire escapes there are overdue for inspections. It turns out the city doesn't have any mechanism in place to track building owners violating the rules and hold them accountable, Mayor Walsh is not happy. Are you concerned that inspection wasn't done since 2004?
Of course I am, and it's something that, you know, constantly every day it seems like something new is coming up around inspection services, and we are looking at revamping a lot of the procedures in there.
Boston Mayor Marty Walsh talking about 296 Beacon Street, the place where welders may have been working on the fire escape when they sparked the inferno at 298 Beacon Street, a fire that killed Boston Fire Lieutenant Ed Walsh and firefighter Michael Kennedy. Records reveal that fire escape had not been inspected since 2004, even though state building code requires inspections every 5 years. So the fire escape should have been inspected in 2009 and then again this year, which raises a troubling question according to fire code expert Amy Cronin, president of Strategic Code Solutions.
We have to question if it had been done in 2009, perhaps there may have been some damage there. Like if you think about rust, if you catch it early enough before there's massive damage and there needs to be reconstruction, maybe the welding would have never been done.
2 of our heroes lost their life in that fire, and I'm not sure if that was the cause, but regardless whether that was the cause or not, we still should have inspected that property.
It turns out many inspections are not being done. Fox Undercover looked at fire escape inspection records for the entire Beacon Street block where the deadly fire happened. 2/3 of those fire escapes are overdue to be inspected. 1/3 of the fire escapes on the block haven't been inspected in 10 or more years. It's the responsibility of property owners to get the inspections done, but there's no evidence of the city cracking down on owners breaking the rules. Shouldn't the city know if an inspection hasn't been done in all those years?
Absolutely, it should, and there should be a report generated that's able to find out what properties haven't been inspected. So if that's one of the properties that haven't been inspected on Beacon Street, can you just imagine the other properties in the city of Boston? That concerns me.
Back to 296 Beacon Street, where the welders who sparked the fire were working. We told you the last inspection on the fire escape was done in 2004. As we reported Wednesday, that inspection was done by Giuseppe Falcone, who owned D&J Ironworks in Malden. Falcone is being sued by the owner of the building that burned down, but he denies having anything to do with the welding that day. No comment from the owner of 296 Beacon Street, which did not have the fire escape inspected for a decade. I'm Mike Bodette for Fox Undercover.
Got it? So guys, welding is done every day. It's the difference between a $3,000 fix and a $3,000 refurb. So that's your first problem. So welding is done every day. What you have to do is when you write the violation, you have to make sure that during the violation process and while you're getting the fire escape repaired, that welding is not the first course, because once you get the violation or the evaluation back from a structural engineer or others acceptable to the building official, it is then that a plan of action is going to be made between the owner, you, and the vendor as to whether or not the fire escape is going to be spot repaired with bolts and then load tested, or if the fire escape is going to be fully refurbished in lieu of a load test. So way before anything ever gets done on a fire escape, you can eliminate the need for the fire escape to be welded, because nobody ever pulls a permit anyway. They never pull a permit on that. And that fire, there was 2 buildings. The guys were working on this fire escape welding. This building caught on fire because a shed right away, probably 5 to 8 feet away from the building, a spark. It was 40 to 60 mile an hour winds that day, blowing from the river towards this. So what happened was the welding on this fire escape caught this shed on fire. This shed on fire, these guys took off. This is all again what was said. The shed on fire, like you saw a little bit of the film there, the shed on fire was so intense because of the wind, it blew through the first floor in the basement. That's what caught that building on fire. So the shed caught that building on fire. Firemen were inside, and as soon as the firemen in the front of the building started knocking out windows, what happened? With wind in the back, going through the basement and through the first floor, out to the front, that blew the whole building up in the fastest time. I think it was 5 to 10 minutes, it was all said that. And that's what trapped the firemen in the basement, because basically as soon as they blew out the front windows, this is again, just general information that I heard, that's when they got trapped in the basement, on the basement floor. So the building didn't catch on fire, the shed, the wind was all a freak accident that occurred very quickly. Got it? All right, so now let's take a look at a couple other things, and we're going to start talking about sort of wrapping it up, because again, we only have so much time, and I don't know how much time you want to continue, but we're going to open up for questions. But here's a couple other silly ones. Rutgers University. This is called a fireman's fire escape on a building. And I believe it's not a frat house, but it's close enough. What do you think about this one? Huh? This actually should be a fire escape only for fire academy trainees. Right? So this is at Rutgers University, still being used today. Here's another wacky one in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Anybody ever hear of a slide fire escape? Slide fire escape. This is a 12-story slide fire escape. It starts over there, slides all the way down, and you go this is the roof access. Every floor has these two little red doors. You open them up, and this is what you see. You get no potato sacks. You go in head first or tail first. It doesn't matter. It's dark like crazy. And at the very end, when you're scrolling around all the way, corkscrewing all the way down, tumbling or whatever, it's basically a human sausage in case anybody's too big to go down the stupid thing. It's a human sausage. And basically at the very end, there's this huge panel on this iron door. So that you're supposed to come down with your feet. So there's a plan here that you're supposed to slide down with your feet. You're supposed to whack this huge paddle with your feet, and this iron door swings out open. So it's corkscrew, and then the last floor turns into a straight shot slide. So it's a fun house for firemen. So the day we got there, nothing was working. So they actually brought in some firemen, some training firemen, and they sent one guy down on a rope from the first floor down to basically kick the door open because it was rusted shut. So this is the only known. Now, a lot of times they used to have slide escapes as a standard means of egress in a lot of buildings. Some of you may have recognized this on schools, factories. They had these things in a lot of places. They were in the code for the longest time before they were just basically taken out. Okay? Now, what I want to do is I have a few more slides to show, but I'm actually going to end it here and see what's if anybody has any questions, and then John, I'll ask you whether or not you want to take it from here. Because I have a few more slides to show, but I want to end on this. This is the first video that you saw when they got there, and this was a complex with 50 apartments. You remember this, right? And you remember that the firemen got there, and again, this wasn't a firefight. This was a rescue mission right from the get-go. And if you remember correctly, there was like a little 8-year-old girl. And that could be anybody's 8-year-old little girl. And usually the mommy sends them down first, right? Or the mommy tries to get ahead of them and say, come on down. But imagine going down a ladder and that it doesn't work. And not just on this fire escape. Every fire escape in this complex didn't work. So when I tell you, I look at fire escapes all over the country, and 75% of them fail. That's just so I don't say the word 100, but every fire escape, on average, because they are 50 to 75 years old, have not been inspected in 25 to 50 years. How many vehicles do you expect to start up in a barn when you have a find? You know, you find a 47 Chevy in a barn. Will it turn over and start? Right? So that when I say that my numbers are high, it's because it's the bastard child of egress. But I want you to understand, this is what your firemen are facing, and only fire prevention can prevent this, and that is, firemen need to do their job when they get there. They need to see a tag. They need to have confidence that the fire escape is safe, not only for the tenants, but for the people who are going there to fight the fire, and they don't want this to occur.
But right now, firefighters are taking down the ladders and rolling up the hoses. But earlier in the night, when they pulled up, there were flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments, because when you pull up to a building and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them, they said that's scary, scary stuff. They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt.
The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in the fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people on that fire escape.
About 50 people were displaced inside this building. However, firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in, except the one unit where the fire was in. They said that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson, on the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
All right, so with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, and because I know it's, I don't know, it's time for you guys to get going, but let's open it up for questions. And I just want to remember one thing. None of this has to change today when you go back to work if you apply the checklist method. That's all you have to do. Don't go looking for fire escapes, because as you will now see more fire escapes than you've ever seen in your cities, because now you're not going to be looking down anymore. You're going to start looking up, and you're going to identify fire escapes that are all in the back. So all your 1, 2, and 3 families that used to be single homes are now 2 or 3 apartments. They have a fire escape in the back that you didn't even know existed. All the alleyways, when you walk down your alleyways now, you will see fire escapes on the back tucked in somewhere, resting onto a roof, and that's it, because they don't completely come down to the ground. That's why you haven't seen them. So if you have 2 and 3 family homes, you have 2 and 3 family businesses, and mansions, and any institutions such as colleges, you have fire escapes. But like homeless, you've never looked for them. So fire escapes are the bastard child of egress. You start making this a checklist item. We'll start out with you first. Fire prevention, sprinkler, smoke detector sign off, ask for a copy. Then we'll bring in the building department guys and start incorporating permits. Then we'll bring in housing, so that any Section 8 housing must have a complete fire escape affidavit. Health department, they're going to get involved too. So it's making a checklist items, and fire escapes will find you. And this is going to take 3 to 5 years to get going on this before it becomes a routine thing. Yes.
Would you say that starts with city ordinances a lot of times? Because a lot of these, we have a lot of frat houses, fraternity houses and sorority houses and stuff like that, and those are technically single-family dwellings. And you get into whether they're, an R2 and R3, all those different things required. Should it be the basically from the city's standpoint to begin with, so that we can only enforce what the code official?
Yeah, I have one answer. If you start from the top down, they'll shoot you in the head.
Yeah.
If you start from the bottom up and don't give anybody warning, just you add this to a checklist, and then after it's gotten some root and it starts, then you do want the ordinance. The ordinance is only because the code, the IFC hasn't been adopted for whatever reason. So in not waiting for the code to come, you actually jump started with an ordinance in your area. Okay. Any other questions? I'll be here, and now this again is a 4 to 6 hour course. I'll send you a copy. If you gave me your card, I'll send you the 4 to 6 hour version of this, and I'll have this quickie, what we call the 90-minute seminar. We'll have it ready for you guys anytime.
Cisco on behalf of Northeast Ohio Fire Prevention. Thank you for sticking around today to put this presentation on for us. Here's a pen and one of our challenge points. But thank you for coming to Northeast Ohio.